So this happened to me when I was 11 or 12 years old, over a decade ago, and I still remember it vividly. At the time, I lived in a semi-detached house with my mom, dad, and sibling. It was decent size, but the most impressive part was a garden, which essentially had 3 levels. The first level was concrete, the second grass, and the third, also grass, had a trampoline on it. At the very end of the garden was a tree embankment. The area I lived in was somewhat hilly. One morning I woke up to a cracking sound, like a snapped branch, and I was worried since a week earlier a tree from the embankment had fallen onto our neighbor's garden. My bedroom was at the back of the house overlooking the garden, so I opened the curtains to see if another tree had fallen. Instead, I saw a guy hiding in one of the trees in the yard. He was pale with blonde hair and wearing all black. He was looking directly at me, presumably because he saw the curtains move. He started smirking and moved his finger in a come here motion. I totally freaked out, shouted for my mom and dad to come into my room. I was so scared and I physically felt like I couldn't move. This was super early in the morning, by the way, around 5 a.m., so it took my dad a good 30 seconds to get in my room, at which point the stranger had hid behind the trees. I remember being really shaken up. I was crying while I told my dad what happened. He went out into the back garden to see if he could spot the guy, but he was gone at that point. A bit of time passed and I started to forget about it. Then, 3 months after, my mom and I were watching TV together after I finished school. The doorbell rang and my mom went to answer the door. I looked out the window of the living room where we were sat and saw a white van parked outside. It was the same van as my uncle's, so I walked out of the living room and into the hallway to say hi. When I got to the porch where my mom was stood, I realized it wasn't my uncle. It was the same guy I had seen in the garden a few weeks prior, and it really freaked me out. He noticed me as I walked behind my mom and gave me the same smirk as when he was in the garden. I wanted to say something to my mom, but I couldn't. I was freaking out inside. Anyway, he just asked my mom if she wanted work done on the drive. She said no, and he left, got back in the van and drove away. He didn't give her a business card or anything. The van didn't have any company branding, and he didn't knock on any of the other neighbors' doors. I told my mom that it was the same guy as soon as he went, and she started to feel uneasy about the situation too. A month or so after that, I got my first job doing the paper route. I had to deliver 300 papers with my best friend at the time. It was getting towards winter and it was dark around 4:30 p.m. We'd been doing the job together for around a month, when the one evening after school it was super dark and rainy. We were halfway through delivering the papers and a van started following us. The van was driving really slow at the same pace we were both walking. We clocked that it was following us after about a minute. We started to panic as I noticed it was the same man again. We left the newspaper trolley and started walking quite fast up the hill. We were about a 10-minute walk from my house. I rang my mom, who made me stay on the line while she left the house to meet us. She told us to go to the corner shop that they were about a minute away from. When we made it to the shop, the van sped off very quickly. The police were called, who came to my house for a report. We told them everything. That was the last time I ever saw that creepy stranger, but I still remember what he looked like, so vividly. This happened some years ago. I was 20 at the time. I was going on a road trip of sort with a really good friend of mine and his family. Our destination was a concert in a country next to ours, but we would be stopping at night to sleep in the camper we drove in. We hadn't crossed the border yet when we stopped at the first campsite for the night. Now, it seemed like a pretty family-friendly and safe place, so none of us had our guards up. That night at about 11 p.m. or so, while my friend and his family were getting ready for bed, I went outside to get some fresh air. Our camper was almost completely next to the beach, so I went down to the shore to dip my feet and get some much-needed quiet time by myself. On the way there, I passed by a beach shack, a detail that will be important later. As I stood there, letting the waves lap over my feet, I noticed the silhouette of a man further down the beach, but it was a public space for campers, so why would I think anything of it? After being absorbed by splashing in the water with my feet and enjoying the moonlight, I decided to make my way back. Of course, it was very dark given the late hour, but I don't scare easily. Now, as a woman in the modern world, I usually do stay on guard after dark, but that thought never occurred to me since I felt I was in a safe environment so close to the campsite. Anyways, as I was walking back, I noticed that the silhouette of the man further down the beach was gone, but even more worrying was the fact that I was nearing the beach shack, and I saw that someone seemed to be trying to hide from my view behind it. Immediately I was on alert and called a friend I knew that would be awake. I gave the shack a wide berth while talking loudly to my friend about how she was coming to meet me. After not too long, I got safely back to the campsite, hopped in bed in the caravan. I didn't tell my friend or his family, because though I was scared, there could have been many logical, non-threatening answers to what I saw. I put it out of my mind, and the rest of the trip went off without a hitch. About a year or so later, I was talking to my friend about the trip, and suddenly remembered the creepy experience. As I told him, he slowly got pale and told me something his brother had told him and his family over breakfast, months after the trip. That same night after I had gotten back and gone to bed, his brother had gotten up late at night to get some water, but when he passed the window right by his bed, he saw a man standing right there outside, looking in the window. As soon as he was seen, the man left, but it definitely creeped out the brother a lot. But just like me, he seemed to put it out of his mind. Now, with both of those stories, it doesn't seem far-fetched that the man hiding by the beach shack had followed me back. I'm really scared to think about what would have happened if I had been alone. My fiance and I, 34-year-old male, 31-year-old female, were taking a 10-day road trip in the late summer from Houston to Tennessee with multiple stops in between. We left Houston around 4 p.m. the first day, and we knew we would be driving through some podunk towns at night. My fiance mentioned to me that we had to be very vigilant at night, as the places we were driving through were some of the poorest in the US, and people were desperate these days. He said we'd only stop for gas and that's it, not like you can see much at night anyway, and I fully agreed with his plan. Well, of course, my fiance gets pulled over for speeding. It was around 10 p.m. on a long stretch of road with no lights. We drive a minute or so with the cop following us until we can pull into the lone gas station on the street. The inside of the corner store was well lit, so much so that it also lit up the parking lot a bit, and there was also a small light at the pumps. It was bright enough for us. We parked by the pump and waited on the officer. The cop gives us a ticket and goes on his way. While my fiance is reading the ticket he received, I can see inside the corner store, and I decide that I should probably use the bathroom, since it actually looked pretty decent and very clean inside. I tell my fiance that I'm going to go inside. He decides to get gas while he waits. Apparently he finishes before I do, because when I walk back outside, he's no longer at the pump. He is parked off to the side in one of the spots near the front of the store, only partially lit there. No big deal, but this is where it gets really weird. I walk over to the van. As I'm reaching for the door handle, I think I hear something. I look over to my right, which is the side of the store where it's completely pitch black, and there is a guy there in a long sleeve hoodie and pants, hands in pockets, wearing a black face mask. He was walking towards the van looking straight at it, and as soon as I opened the door, he did a 180, turned around and walked right back into the darkness. Let me tell you, There was literally nothing behind that store. No lights, no streets, no cars, nothing. I immediately jumped in the van and pointed him out to my fiance. My fiance has the vehicle interior lights on, head down just reading the ticket, not paying attention to what was going on outside. I have no doubts that the guy could see my fiance was busy in our vehicle, and when I pointed out the guy to my fiance, we both watched him walk off into the darkness. Hands never left his pockets, never took his hood down. All my fiance said was, "What the fuck?" And we immediately left. Where was that guy even coming from? Why did he turn around as soon as he saw me? Why was he dressed like that? A lot of people from our backwoods areas don't take kindly to the mask mandate, and you're telling me this guy was willingly wearing a mask outside at night, along with long-sleeve clothing in the Texas summer? I don't think so. There was something terribly wrong about that encounter. I still think about it. I'm pretty sure we just barely evaded a robbery, or possibly something much worse. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the end of the video. I do need stories to keep the channel moving, so please share the channel with as many people that you know that are into the horror scene. If you would like your story featured on an upcoming video, email my email in the description box below. And until we meet again, stay sinful.